Good to go. There we go. Thank you. Yeah, once again, thanks again for the invitation to come and share some of the activities and where we can provide it learnings in terms of engagement at USQ with our activities with students. So just as a quick disclaimer, I was on leave returning to work today, so I very quickly tried to whip up some content of interest. So apologies in advance if it's not the most cohesive run sheet of things, but happy to share what my team takes charge of in terms of student success advising activities at USQ so far. So in terms of background, as Katrina mentioned to, my name's Clinton. So I lead two teams actually within the students portfolio. So with the student support and retention team, one half of my remit is the back-end student administration. So I have a portion of my team looks after all of the fees, enrollments, compliance, administrative type functions for students. And the other larger function is the one that we'll be focusing on today, which is the team that focuses on outreach, early intervention and monitoring of students to foster success. So the student success advising component of the work. So that's kind of the introduction. As I said, I do have a very mushed together and repurposed presentation. I'd love to come back and speak to you all again with something with a bit more focus if you let me know the areas of interest as a result of this presentation. So in the illustrious words of COVID world, I'll share my screen. And everyone can see that? Yes. Okay. So just in terms of what I was hoping to run through today, just a bit of background of where we are at, how it's all come about in terms of student success advising. Very conscious of time, so I'll power through this presentation quickly. I'm probably most interested to get to questions after I can share what I've got to share. So what are we doing?
Take as much time as you need. We've got that.
No problem.
Please use.
No worries. So what are we doing in terms of success advising at USQ? I've got three kind of key activities that I'd like to run through, hopefully to provoke a bit of conversation and thoughts, and maybe a bit of information sharing and awareness on my behalf as well. I'll talk about our peer welcome process. So that's where we engage, there's that word, engage. We bring on second and third year students to do outreach to all of the incoming students at the start of every semester. I'll talk about our study desk participation monitoring. So the kind of the process that we go through to ensure that all of our students understand what study desk is, the importance of it, and fostering those good study habits early on. I'll talk about progression management, which is a big one at the moment, some of our challenges, and some time for questions, of course. So, unashamedly taken straight from the academic plan is the piece of information about integrated intervention and academic advising at USQ. So it seeks to implement a systematic approach to proactive, data-driven, timely outbound contact with students to offer information, advice, support, and mentoring with the aim of increasing persistence with learning, assessment, submission, course completion, grade achievement, and progression into subsequent courses. So it's a very high-level vision that we're working towards. I guess sort of underneath that, through various pieces of work with other institutions and our own, evolution of what we do to support students proactively, we're trying to focus on some of these objectives with the activities that we undertake, which we call advising conversations within the work that we perform. So some of the objectives of the outreach and the activities that I'm about to go through are really around what can we do to help students form early connections with their peers. So a lot of these objectives are from Emily McIntosh's work, which I believe is around tutoring. How do we work with students to establish positive study habits? So again, the study desk participation campaign that I work through is a big one in that space. how do we work with them to reflect on their own well-being? So the personal and the pastoral kind of area. And how do we normalize help-seeking behaviour? So how do we encourage students to reach out for help where and when they need it, which is a big one in a lot of the outreach and conversations that we do have with students. So to get into the overview, I won't talk through all of this. Some of you may have seen this before, but this is kind of our approach to a full semester. You see the weeks of the semester across the middle here, and here's all of the activities, the touch points, and the time of semester when we undertake these different campaigns, as we call them. So to start off with, in the transitioning phase of the semester, in the lead up to the semester before it even starts, we focus on our welcome campaign. So about 6 weeks out from semester, well, it's probably a bit further out than that, about 10 weeks out from semester start each semester, we monitor students who have to support them through the whole applying, being admitted into the university, enrolling for the first time. So that's a very large, complex campaign, and there's a very nice looking flow chart, which I'll explain to you, but I'll ask that you bear with me. Basically, we support all of these groups from their very first decision to apply to USQ or to a university, any university, but in our context. And we support them through the multiple steps required to actually become a student. You walk into class and you're enrolled, you know what you're doing, all of that sort of stuff. So that starts with the decision to apply. Where my team focuses their effort is once the student has accepted an offer, they've been made an offer to a program at USQ, they've accepted it, they then need to go on and enroll. So that's choosing their courses for the semester that's coming up. So we identify all of the students who are at that point in time. They've put their hand up, they've accepted an offer to come and be a student, and they need to enroll. So end to end, there's about 4,000 students that we have an interaction with throughout that whole process. So usually in a semester one, as the biggest semester, there's about 5,000 students on average that come in, and we have a conversation with many of them. So from there, once they're enrolled, they progress through. So they're the students who are progressing of their own volition. They know what they're doing, they're enrolled, they're all good. The ones who don't enroll, this is where we start to unpack that idea of engagement. We send an email to all of these students. What we've seen is a lot of the time the email's not even read. And if it's not read, which is a huge issue, I would say sector-wide, even if it is read, the student still hasn't taken the action that they need to take. So that's either they don't know what to do, they don't know how to do it, they want to put it off and think they can just do it later, many different reasons. So we have a timed follow-up with an SMS that goes out to the students who still haven't taken an action, and that escalates to a phone call in the end. So as the semester approaches, we escalate our activities to ensure that they are getting the message that they have access to support in the different areas that they do need it. So for semester two, as an example, we phoned 1,180 students who were stuck in that I've accepted an offer, but I haven't enrolled. And after that contact, about 593 went on and did the action that we asked them to do. So 50% engagement, I'll say, in this sense. So I'm saying using engagement in this context because they took the action that we were trying to work with them to do so. So I think that's probably the definition that we really try to apply with a lot of our activities. So look, getting back to this group here, the streamline group, the ones that they go through, they step through all the administrative and system hurdles that they are required to do as a self-service activity. Everyone's looped into this lovely bunch of students here, which I mentioned before. So we call these the peer advisors, and what they are is, or who they are as second and third year students. And they have a phone conversation with every single new student at the start of the semester. And they're really aimed at fostering that early peer connection, someone they can, that's not a staff member, they can ask all of their questions. They are a student. And that conversation was really about setting those early expectations of good study habits. So one of the big things there is the expectations of study. lot of our conversations with students are around, oh, I can see that you're enrolled in a full-time load. Did you know that equates to roughly 40 hours of study per week? Oh, you're working full-time as well. So how are you going to fit all that in together? So I think it's really talking through those. This is the very real expectations of being a full-time student. And, you know, from there, here's your options. So you can drop back to 2 or 3 courses in this particular program, and, you know, all of the, I guess, pathways from there. So I think it is to really set those expectations early and give them someone, a friendly face and voice to have that conversation with to start off with, and also someone that they can loop back to. A lot of these students end up in our team. They stay on as a fixed term employee or help us out with other bits and pieces as well. So they're a really, really good group, and those conversations are always positive when we can make the connection. So just one little snapshot of a bit of feedback here from a student. So, sorry I missed your call. I was traveling to my parents out at Charleville. There was no reception. So, you know, these are the day-to-day challenges we have in actually having a conversation with a student. So we have, being a technology-based group, we have automation in the sense of we're identifying these students. We know that there's some kind of blocker for them to progress through, reaching out. But I think every step in the process, there's these challenges to actually have that conversation. So that's probably the wrap up for that process. Moving on, and this is probably where you'll see a marked decrease in the quality of the presentation. We move on to the study desk participation. So we specifically call this participation because it's based on more or less a off-on condition. So we identify all of the students who haven't logged on to the study desk in the first few weeks of semester. So we start in week 1, and it goes through till the census date, which is the end of week 4. So that week 4 of activity is intensely focused on reaching out to all the students who aren't showing those good positive study habits. They aren't logging on regularly, or they're not logging on at all. So I just have some very raw numbers here to give you a sense. So in week 1, this is semester 2 data, there's 576 enrolled students who hadn't logged on the study desk at all. So that was by the end of week 1. So what we have in the sense of interventions is similar to the approach that I talked through before in that workflow. So we'll email these students, then we follow up with an SMS, and then we end up with a phone call. So as the weeks progress, so you have round 1, which is week 1, week 2, week 4, which is the census date, and then afterwards, you can see the numbers coming down. So when we send the email initially, I think this initial number is something close to 2,000. So just by their general volition, they will be logging and checking study desk. Some will get our email and then log on and take the action that we want. Next round is SMS, people who still haven't done it. So that's 332, the number comes down to. Next round is a phone call, and then we end up with this 49 number. So in semester 2, we actually found this 49. This is in the last teaching week of semester. 49 students had not logged onto study desk at all in I don't know, I think, 13 teaching weeks. So a scary number, or a bit of an alarming number when you say it out loud. So what we do with those students, we've just started doing it after, I think Sarah's in this group, with our law pilot. We systematically identify all the students who haven't, and basically reach out and just say, listen, you haven't done anything. You can either take a fail, not participate now, or you can withdraw and get a WAP grade. So there is a group of students there. And there's some nuances in the data which we can talk through. Lisa, do you have a question for now? Happy to stop and to pause there and go through that if you want.
Sorry, yes, Clinton, just one quick question. Is that first year only students that you're talking about, or the whole kind of cohort across 2nd and 3rd and 4th years as well?
This is all current students.
All current students. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. Yep.
Yeah, no, good point. I think it is scalable in that sense. We try to do it for everyone because we do have a bit of assistance with data and systems there. So the next activity I wanted to talk through is progression monitoring. So this is quite new. The procedure for the student academic progress procedure was approved and implemented in August this year. And it's a complete revamp of our monitoring of students for academic progression. So previously, some of you may be familiar with the conditional academic standing procedure for which it replaced. That procedure was based on identifying students by GPA thresholds. It was a bit limited in the sense that it didn't pick up that semester to semester activity and outcomes for students. I don't think the process was kind of dynamic enough to pick up students early and then layer in sort of tailored support for students in their different situations. So the new procedure is much more involved, and for results release for semester 2, which occurred on the 17th of November, that's the first cohort of students who are bound by that new procedure. So I'd recommend, I should have put a link in, sorry, I can send that around after, but trying to just go through it very simply, it's based on the new procedure outlines stages of support for students who, in terms of their progression. So students who are passing everything and going along fine, they're in this satisfactory student group. So they pass all of their courses. As soon as they have one fail in a course, we identify them as a priority student. So as soon as they get their first fail, they come up on our list to monitor and I guess start outreach to. And from there, if they continue to fail over half of their course load, if they repeat fail, if they re-enroll in courses that they failed before, they escalate to the extra tier of support. And from there, repeat fails, not engaging with support that's available, things like that, they proceed to a show cause for exclusion. So that's kind of a very quick overview of the new procedure. So we're currently working on, I think there's about 3,000 students we identified as a result of semester 2 results being released. So we're working through and applying or assessing all of those students based on what stage of support they should be on. So don't have a lot more to share at this stage because it is brand new. There's a lot of system development work going on to identify students. As you can imagine, this will become, well, it already is a very complex way of identifying students and assessing them. But as we start working through it, I'm happy to share kind of the outcomes and results there. So they're kind of the main activities. I wanted to move on to, I guess, some of the challenges that we found with, I guess, those 3 quite large campaigns that are on throughout various semesters or various points of the semester. So as I sort of alluded to before, in terms of engagement and what is genuine engagement, how do we connect with students on their terms? Across all of the outreach that we do, it's usually about 30-35% pickup rate for phone calls. So from the outset, sometimes we don't even get the chance to have the dialogue. And what we've had to do as a result is scaffold in those other channels to make sure that that message is presented in a meaningful way that isn't spam per se. So we are treading a fine line, I would say, but with all of the emails and outreach that we do as a university as a whole, I think how do we strategically layer in that phone call that could be quite critical and the difference between the student passing and failing. How do we ensure all students who have a stumble are given the timely choices that are real to them? So more on that scalability piece in terms of those activities that I've spoke about. What are the systems and data that we need to identify all of those students in a meaningful way, in a timely way? How do we know exactly what they need? How do we know what the opportunities are for them and how come they're stumbling? I think identification and doing that in an at-scale approach is really, really difficult. And when we do have that conversation, what's the skill set? What's our capabilities from a team perspective on inspiring action, which is kind of into my next point. But I guess what we found is this 35% that we can connect with, we've seen more and more where we've advised students that if you don't take this action, there will be consequences, and those consequences can be all the way from failing a course to being charged the full fees for a course to being kicked out of university in terms of an exclusion process. So giving them all of the information, is that enough? And this sort of feeds into my next point. What's our role in fostering good decision-making and inspiring action? We can give a student all of the information about what their situation is, try and give them advice, but ultimately it's their choice. And what we've seen in some of those scenarios is we've contacted a student to say, you need to go in and submit a Commonwealth assistance form, otherwise you won't be able to access, you won't be able to defer your fees for this semester. And you'll have to pay up front then. Can you pay up front? Yes or no? And the answer is like usually no, but advising a student of that, you would expect that's pretty dire consequence. They'll go on and do the thing they were asking them to do. But what we're observing in a lot of cases is they don't. When we're speaking to them and helping them understand the gravity of the situation, very agreeable. Yes, that sounds good. I'll go and do it tonight. I'll go and do this. Go and check the next day, and they don't do it. So I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to for me is what is our role, and we need to be comfortable with our processes and our approach to advising students, and knowing where that line in the sand is. That the good old lead a horse to water, and that's what we're seeing a lot. But is that enough? I think more and more in the university, we're seeing the expectation where we need to be doing more, and we almost need to be administering some actions for students, which leads me into my next point, the job ready graduates. I didn't put a lot in here about that. So some of you may not be aware of the new package. Well, most of it's new for next year, but students have to maintain a 50% pass rate after their first 8 courses. Otherwise they lose their eligibility for a Commonwealth supported place. In terms of our funding stream at the university, that is a large majority of our funding source. So a significant challenge for us to support students through all of that. And probably this is the final point I wanted to end on. The government's, or part of the government's recommendation in terms of administering this monitoring is we should be monitoring study desk learning management system behaviour. So on that, I asked, well, what is engagement in the study desk? Is it logging on, which is all we have access to monitor now? And I would say that that's not. The data that we've seen shows that, yeah, you can log on, but doesn't mean you're going to be successful. I think sort of to tie up all of these points here, we need to have visibility of what are you doing on study desk. You're in 4 courses. Are you exhibiting good behaviours across all 4 of those courses? Are you watching the whole video? Are you accessing all the selected readings? Are you doing all that? And I think there's a part of that is just information. But I think where we are, we need to understand that behaviour and what are good indicators of success in order to foster it at the front, if that makes sense. So that's probably all I wanted to run through in terms of the information. Happy to have a conversation now around any of that content, but feel free to reach out afterwards, any of those email addresses if you like.
Thank you very much, Clinton. That was exceptionally illuminating. We already have some questions in chat, and I'm sure there will be more, but I'll stop recording now